Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this Blitz chess postmortem video. This is a postmortem of my Blitz chess game number 137. I was black here. My opponent played d4. I played knight f6, hoping to get into a Nimzo or something like that. And my opponent disappoints me by playing knight f3. And after e6, bishop g5. And we get into something called the Torre attack. That's when white sets up this pawn triangle here and puts the bishop on g5. And we'll eventually get to that position after a few moves. If the bishop is on c4, then that's the London system. So it's bishop here, Torre attack, bishop here, London system, and bishop back here, it's called the call system. Or if the bishop gets fianchettoed, also with the pawn triangle, and then a pawn on b3 as well, that's the call Zuckertort system. So that's your taxonomy of all these white triangle systems. What they have in common is they're all very solid. They give a slight edge to white, very slight, you can see here. The chess engine thinks it's almost equal. And bishop e7 maybe is not the most challenging move here. It looks like the book move is c5, so if you want to try this, bishop e7 is okay though. But c5 may be something to try and stir up some trouble. But probably he will just respond with e3 and set up that triangle anyway, your opponent. So there's just no avoiding it. If your opponent is white and he's determined on playing one of these solid setups, there's just not much you can do about it. You're stuck with it. So we're on to the opening book. There wasn't a lot to be gleaned there, I didn't think. The game stays fairly even for a while. Since white is not taking the center, you might as well take some more space and try and establish some threats. And you see after you get in the move c5, c3. Now he's got the full triangle set up, but actually black has a bit more space here, and thinks it's about even to slightly better for black, depending on the move. It didn't approve of my plan. I have this plan of playing bishop a5 and trading the light squared bishop. But I think it's still a good plan. Sometimes the chess engine doesn't see far enough ahead to realize some of these advantages. But it thinks black should go ahead and exchange the bishop for the knight here, leaving me with one bishop, a dark squared bishop, and black with the two knights going into a closed position. But I would try to open up lines and make that bishop be pretty good. And this is a good bishop to start with, because these pawns are on light squares, and that's a dark squared bishop. So I think black is doing okay here in spite of that computer evaluation giving black somewhat of an advantage. And then white finally decides to open up some lines here. And I pick up a tempo on the queen. And we stay in the same range of just slightly better for white. I do have to be careful whenever there's that exchange. Maybe that was what the chess engine was penalizing, was the awkward rook on a6. You have to always be aware of tactics against that when you play something like that. But right here, okay, so is this move. Yeah, there's a threat here of just taking the pawn. Let's see, it's been there for a few moves. But I want to take this pawn at a time when he can't take back with a piece. So I create an isolated pawn, and that gives me a target. So right now the knight is defending it and the queen is defending it. After this move, the queen's no longer defending it. And after here, the knight's no longer defending it. So I'd be interested in taking right away, except that white has this fork here, so I need to respond, and it looks like rook c7 is a move, or rook c8, bringing the other rook over. Anyway, I chose rook c7, and now, what should he play? Something, a rook to d1 to defend that pawn, and so he can take back with a piece. So this move here was a mistake, and now I get a slight edge, because I finally have achieved this isolated pawn, and I have something to attack here. And I keep this edge for a while. It's interesting to see the exact moment where it goes astray. Now, rook c2 was not the best move. I think I should just keep my sights solidly on this d-pawn and just focus everything on that, and ignore these distractions like rook c2, which on the surface appears pretty good, but apparently not the best. Rook c4 attacks that pawn. as a move. Rook d8, attacking the pawn from the front, or queen d8, attacking the pawn from the front. They're all moves. It's funny, queen d8 is not a move I was thinking of. It's hard to consider a move that involves putting your queen back on its original square, like you're undeveloping it. But there are times when that's the best place for the queen, and this is one of them. You're defending that, you're attacking that pawn, you're defending the knight here in case it gets under attack, and it's just a good square. What can I say? So I still have an advantage, though, and I keep this slight advantage. Notice that it's less than a pawn, because material's even. I just have this positional advantage of a isolated pawn to attack. And I keep the advantage up until, yeah, so it didn't think this was best. This idea of knight b4, undermining the knight, but taking on some weaknesses over here. But it still maintains some advantage. Again, it's saying I should just go queen d8. Put the queen on d8 after all, and try and get pressure against the d-pawn. It's funny. A simple plan. So I want this more complicated plan, but notice it still gives black somewhat of an advantage here. I guess this isolated d-pawn is weaker than my isolated doubled b-pawns. A bit contradictory, but this is a more important pawn, so if I can win this and maybe trade it for one of my b-pawns, that would be good for me. So we do okay for a few moves here. I do okay, I mean, for a few moves. That move, rook to c4. Yeah, the chess engine has another idea. Now I finally am decided to focus on this d-pawn, playing rook to c4, and the chess engine is saying, well, look, you've got the second rank. Why don't you take advantage of that? So it's all in the timing. It's not the moves. It's when they're played. So rook e2 has the idea that the other rook can come down to c2, and you can actually double on the second rank there, which would be pretty strong. The line given by the chess engine actually wins a pawn. Rook e2, d5, e takes d5, queen takes d5, and rook takes b2. So I don't think that's all forced, but that's some indication that black has a pretty good position. So this was not the best way to play it here, and he just pushes ahead with d5. And now I have to decide. If I take, it seems to me it's going to be kind of a nothing position. Let's go ahead and put that on the board. Rook takes, new variation. E takes, rook takes, and then, you know, what have I got going? I've got these weak pawns over here. He's got his pawns together. It's interesting that the chess engine still thinks black is slightly better, but very minuscule advantage. So I was trying for something a little more, and I knew at the time in the game, if you listen to the live commentary, you'll say I was a little bit dubious. I warned that this was a possible mistake. It's a double-edged move because I'm letting his pawn become a passed pawn, and passed pawns can become very strong, and you'll see that happens in this game. So when the pawn was here, before it came forward, it was a weak, isolated pawn I could attack, and now 2 moves later, it's a strong pawn. It's an isolated pawn, but it's a passed pawn, and there's enough force on the board to, I guess the real issue is whether I can surround this pawn and win it or not. And it's not so much the amount of force, but it would be easier if the queen and one of the rooks was off the board, so it was just a single rook, a straightforward rook and pawn endgame with one rook for each side, because then my king could get over here and attack this pawn faster than his king could get over here and defend it. And so I have a good chance of rounding that pawn up in the endgame. But there's still a lot of force on the board, and with the queen on the board, it's hard for my king to get over and help round up that pawn. And you'll see this in the game. So white plays this portion of the game very well, and you'll see his advantage slowly increases as he pushes the pawn forward and I try to surround it. See, the numbers are going up. So he's just improving his position step by step. And now here he has a chance. Yeah, when I played this move, queen f5, I undefended my b-pawns. But I was thinking of checks against his king and stuff like that. Anyway, it was just tricky to find a move there, I guess is what I'm saying. after king g8, he's just actually winning. So if you want to cover up the right side of the screen and find the winning move for white, you can treat this as a little quiz. I'm going to go ahead and give the answer away now, because it's also being shown by the chess engine. Queen e7 just wins here. He's chased my king away from the defense of the rook, and my queen has been moved away voluntarily to a square where it can't defend that rook either. So so I'm just in big trouble here. I have to move the rook out of the way. It says I should try queen b1 check, but there's not much to be done. The other idea is to sacrifice my rook for the pawn. It's losing. So fortunately for me, my opponent did not play that, but he still has a pretty strong advantage through here. So I start delivering checks, just trying for a some kind of perpetual, and even giving up the pawn still leaves white with a winning game, because he gathered up my queenside pawn. So he has a pair of protected passed pawns over here. So the queen's on the board. He just needs to keep his king safe enough that there's no perpetual, and he can just push these forward. So his queen is actually on a good square right now, because it defends this f2 pawn. And so I can't really check his king except on this diagonal here. I could check from this direction from the f4 square, and he could play the move g3 and block that diagonal. And as long as his queen is sitting here protecting f2, there's really not much more I can do. I can't really get my queen into any of these squares. I can go to f3, but his king is still guarding the entry points of g2 and h1. So so that would be the way to play this as white. Just keep your queen there, don't move it. Keep your king there, don't move that, and just push those pawns. This pawn can go. You might have to prepare like b3, then a4, a5, a6, a7, and after a7 you can place the queen down here with check and queen the pawn. So pretty straightforward win at this point, I think. He went b4 right away, and I played this move, which yeah, okay, so it's winning for white if he took. Let's do this. I was wondering if maybe I had a chance to win, because if he pushes, okay, this is drawish, because he's going to check. He's going to queen with check. I queen first, but he queens with check, and still a slight edge for white. Okay, so that's the best case, but he doesn't have to push the pawn. In fact, that's a mistake. What he should do is bring his king over to either of those squares. I don't know why I preferred g3, but now his king is inside the square of my pawn, so he can stop this pawn from queening, and I have to run over here to try and stop these pawns, but he's got a pair of pawns, so he can push these forward, and the winning technique is pretty simple. I have to try and get in front of these pawns, and now my king is frozen. I can go back and forth between these two squares, but I can't ever take any of these pawns. My king is just stuck there. So say I just go back and forth, and he can, and I can't ever leave them, or they will queen. So I'm in a little box here that I can't get far away. So his king can just come forward, and he can advance his pawns and take my pawns, and it's just an easy win. So that's the simplest way to win this. So he should have just taken my queen here. Instead, he went for a check and played a4, and now you see suddenly zeros appear on the board, and that's because of the move queen f4 check, and this is just an unstoppable draw. The king goes to the back rank. I always have the queen to square c1, which he's not protecting with this queen, and his other choice would be to play the move g3 if he ever plays that. And then I just come in here, and then this is a perpetual check as well. Oops, not there. There. But he didn't move the pawn. Anyway, but that was why when I pointed to that earlier position where his queen was here on g3, he should have just, b6. His queen was here on b6, protecting f2. He should have just left it there, and when I interposed my queen, he should have traded it. So anyway, after queen f4 check, he played king g1, and we just repeated moves like that, and the game was drawn. So a lucky escape for me. Pretty interesting how playing for a win can turn out to be playing for a loss. Happens to me fairly often, and something to keep in mind in your own games. You try to be objective about your position. If you're worse, you need to admit it, or if you're if you've lost all your winning chances and the best you can hope for is a draw, you should just settle for the draw sometimes. Okay, that's your chess philosophy for today. I hope you enjoyed it, and leave any comments you have in the section below. I'll see you again later. Bye.